President Donald Trump's continued anti-Somalia campaign. His racist comments have sparked outrage among Somalis across the world. The latest reaction has come from the Somali defense minister, reacting to Trump's repeated attacks against the country. The minister said that the US president should focus on fulfilling his pledges to American voters rather than busying himself with Somalia. In his statement, the defense minister thanked the US for its military support in the fight against Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists.
People from Norway, Sweden, just a few. Let us have a few. From Denmark, do you mind sending us a few people? Send us some nice people, do you mind? But we always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime.
For decades, Somalia has been written off as fragile, chaotic, and powerless, a nation defined by others, not by itself. But that narrative just got shattered. When United States leader President made dismissive remarks about Somalia, the defense minister didn't just respond, he fired back with authority, reclaiming national dignity and commanding global attention. In this video, we unpack how Somalia's bold stance isn't just a rebuttal, it is a signal that African nations are rising, asserting themselves, and rewriting the rules of international respect. This is more than politics. This is a victory for sovereignty, pride, and a continent refusing to be silenced.
In an era where global headlines often reduce African states to passive subjects of foreign commentary, a recent episode involving Somalia has captured international attention, not for the usual crises that dominate coverage, but for a bold assertion of national dignity. The incident unfolded when remarks made by a prominent former leader of the United States were widely perceived as dismissive and derogatory towards Somalia, sparking outrage both within the country and across the broader African continent. What followed, however, was more than just a rebuttal. It was a decisive demonstration that Somalia is asserting itself on the world stage, refusing to be marginalized or silenced. The context is critical. For decades, Somalia has been portrayed in international media narratives as fragile, conflict-prone, and perpetually dependent on foreign intervention. This framing, often rooted in outdated stereotypes, overlooks the country's resilience, adaptive governance structures, and the strategic efforts it has made to stabilize its institutions despite decades of challenges. When the leader of the United States made remarks that seemed to trivialize Somalia's statehood, it was not merely an insult. It was a reminder of the persistent perception of African states as subordinate actors in global affairs. Such perceptions have long shaped foreign policy approaches and international engagement, often constraining the ability of African nations to assert independent policy positions without external interference. Enter Somalia's defense minister. The response was measured yet uncompromising, a statement that not only defended Somalia's integrity, but also projected a confident, self-aware narrative that resonated domestically and internationally. The statement emphasized national sovereignty, dignity, and the right of a state to define its own identity and destiny without undue interference from external powers. This response did more than refute the remarks. It reframed the discourse. Instead of accepting the narrative imposed by a powerful foreign voice, Somalia took control of its own story. Domestically, the impact was immediate and profound. Citizens, long accustomed to seeing their nation depicted through lenses of crisis and dependency, found in the defense minister's words a source of affirmation and pride. The statement functioned as a rallying point for national unity, reinforcing the idea that Somalia's leaders are capable of defending the nation's honor on the global stage. This is significant in a country where national cohesion remains a sensitive and often fragile construct. By articulating a confident, dignified position, the defense minister not only addressed an external provocation, but also strengthened internal solidarity. Internationally, the response was equally impactful. Diplomats, analysts, and global media commentators noted the assertiveness of Somalia's position, recognizing it as a departure from the historically reactive or muted responses typical of smaller or less influential states when confronted with criticism from superpowers. This shift signals a broader evolution in African diplomacy, one that rejects deference for its own sake and instead favors engagement based on mutual respect and sovereignty. The defense minister's response underscored that African states, including those often labeled as fragile, are fully capable of navigating complex international environments, asserting their interests, and commanding attention on their own terms. The broader significance of this moment lies in what it represents for Africa's political posture. Across the continent, there is a growing recognition that old paradigms of global hierarchy are no longer uncontested. African nations are increasingly willing to challenge outdated assumptions, demand respect, and insist on equitable participation in international discourse. Somalia's assertive response is a microcosm of this larger movement. It exemplifies how nations long considered peripheral can leverage strategic communication, moral authority, and principled stances to reshape perceptions and reclaim agency in global affairs. This episode also challenges persistent narratives about weak or dependent states. By asserting itself in the face of dismissive commentary from a global superpower, Somalia sent a clear signal. It is neither powerless nor willing to accept marginalization. The defense minister's statement conveyed confidence rooted in legitimacy, governance, and national pride. This is not the rhetoric of bravado. It is the articulation of a strategic reality, a nation that has survived turmoil, strengthened its institutions, and cultivated the diplomatic acumen to defend its sovereignty effectively. In doing so, Somalia disrupts the stereotypical depiction of African states as perpetually subordinate, demonstrating that strength and resilience can coexist with challenges, and that moral authority in international relations is as critical as economic or military power. Furthermore, the response illustrates the evolving role of leadership in shaping national narratives. Effective leadership in contemporary Africa is increasingly measured not only by domestic governance, but also by the ability to navigate international perceptions, assert national interests, and communicate with clarity and authority on the world stage. Somalia's defense minister embodies this model, a leader who recognizes the symbolic power of words, the strategic implications of public statements, and the importance of projecting both competence and dignity. The statement, therefore, should be understood not merely as a defensive posture, but as a proactive demonstration of diplomatic skill. In terms of global signaling, Somalia's response also carries implications for the United States and other traditional power brokers. It is a reminder that unilateral or dismissive remarks toward African states no longer pass without scrutiny or consequence. The dynamics of influence are shifting, with African nations increasingly willing to assert themselves and hold powerful countries accountable in the arena of public opinion and international diplomacy. This does not imply confrontation for its own sake. Rather, it reflects a recalibration of respect, a reassertion of sovereign equality, and a refusal to accept narratives that diminish the legitimacy of African voices. The significance extends to regional dynamics as well. Somalia's assertiveness reinforces its position as a credible actor in East Africa and the Horn of Africa, signaling to neighbors and regional partners that it is capable of defending its interests, participating in collective security, and contributing to regional stability from a position of dignity and authority. By refusing to be portrayed as passive or weak, Somalia strengthens not only its own standing, but also the credibility of regional cooperation frameworks that rely on capable and assertive state actors. Crucially, this episode underscores the power of narrative in geopolitics. Global influence is increasingly shaped not solely by military or economic might, but by the ability to command the narrative, to project legitimacy, and to define the terms of engagement. Somalia's response demonstrates mastery of this principle. By responding with composure, authority, and clarity, the defense minister shifted the conversation from one centered on external judgment to one focused on Somalia's sovereignty, resilience, and strategic relevance. This narrative victory has long-term implications. It establishes a precedent for how Somalia, and by extension, other African states, can assert themselves in global debates, challenge unfair characterizations, and secure recognition as capable, self-determined actors. It is also worth noting that the reaction from the international community highlights a subtle but meaningful shift in perception. Observers across Africa, the Middle East, and Europe recognize the response as emblematic of a broader trend. African states are no longer content to occupy secondary roles in global discourse. They are asserting moral authority, strategic insight, and diplomatic competence in ways that demand recognition. Somalia's response, therefore, serves as a template for constructive, principled assertiveness, a model that combines firm defense of national dignity with measured engagement designed to enhance legitimacy rather than provoke unnecessary conflict. Equally important is the domestic message regarding governance and resilience. In nations with histories of external interference, public perceptions of state strength are critical. By demonstrating the capacity to defend national honor on the global stage, Somalia's leadership reinforces confidence in the state itself. Citizens are reminded that their leaders are attentive, capable, and committed to safeguarding the nation's interests. This reinforces social cohesion and trust in institutions, key ingredients for long-term stability, economic development, and national resilience. From a strategic perspective, this incident highlights Somalia's ability to navigate the complexities of modern geopolitics. The defense minister's response was not reactive in the simplistic sense. It was calculated, deliberate, and designed to achieve multiple objectives simultaneously, affirming sovereignty, strengthening national pride, influencing international perception, and signaling regional credibility. Such sophistication is indicative of a maturing foreign policy approach that balances principle with pragmatism, demonstrating that even nations facing significant challenges can engage effectively on the global stage when armed with clarity, coherence, and strategic intent. The symbolic dimension cannot be overstated. Somalia's rebuttal represents more than a mere response to derogatory remarks. It is a declaration of self-respect and agency. By refusing to accept belittlement, Somalia signals to the world that it is a nation defined by its own terms, not by external assumptions or outdated stereotypes. This symbolism resonates not only with the domestic population, but also with the African diaspora and international allies seeking a more equitable global order. It affirms the principle that dignity, respect, and sovereign equality are non-negotiable pillars of international relations. Looking ahead, the implications of this moment are clear. Somalia has demonstrated that it can wield influence beyond its immediate geographic and economic weight. It has shown that effective diplomacy, assertive communication, and principled engagement can yield recognition, reshape narratives, and enhance national prestige. This is a template for other states seeking to navigate the complex terrain of 21st century geopolitics, where perception, narrative, and legitimacy are as consequential as traditional measures of power. Ultimately, this episode reinforces the notion that Somalia is not a passive participant in global affairs, but an active, self-confident, and strategically minded actor. By responding with authority and composure, the defense minister did more than defend the nation's honor. He repositioned Somalia as a credible, assertive player capable of influencing discourse, defending sovereignty, and commanding respect. The narrative battle has been won, and in doing so, Somalia has sent a clear message. It is a nation that will not be dismissed, diminished, or defined by others. Its dignity is intact, its voice is amplified, and its place in the international arena is increasingly one of respect and strategic relevance. In conclusion, the response from Somalia represents a watershed moment in African diplomacy. It is a striking reminder that nations previously perceived as peripheral can, through calculated and principled assertiveness, redefine their global standing, command respect, and reclaim narratives long dominated by external actors. Somalia did not merely react. It asserted, it defended, and it emerged stronger, reshaping perceptions of what it means to be a sovereign African state in a rapidly changing world. This is more than diplomacy. It is a statement of self-respect, resilience, and vision. In a global order often dominated by the loudest voices, Somalia has proven that dignity, clarity, and strategic foresight can resonate louder, rewriting expectations and establishing a new benchmark for African self-assertion. Somalia did not just respond. It won the narrative, reclaimed its dignity, and reminded the world that sovereignty and strength are earned through courage, clarity, and an unwavering commitment to national honor. In this moment, the message is unmistakable. Somalia is a nation defined by its own terms, capable of standing tall and unafraid to assert itself in the global arena.